So we're 7 games into Ohio State's football season, and we have not come out of one of those games talking about how Ohio State pretty clearly got beat in one phase of the game until today, coming out of the Iowa game. Here at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, a lot of discussions today with Coach Ryan Day and offensive coordinator Kevin Wilson about how Iowa's defense won the matchup with the run game. I'm Nathan Baird from Cleveland.com, along with Doug Lesmerises and Stephen Means. And very simply, I mean, they talked a lot coming into the week about Iowa's going to be a very fundamental team. They're going to be a very physical team, and they're going to have to win those one-on-one matchups. And kind of the prevailing thought today was that didn't happen enough, and it's something Ohio State has to fix for some potentially bigger matchups down the road.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that on the post-game pod, and what a lot of what Day and Wilson were saying kind of validated that. Whether it was, Travion and Maya not necessarily hitting holes, or especially the interior guys, Donovan Jackson and Luke Whippler and Matthew Jones, they just weren't winning one-on-one battles. So it brings up that question again of, was the running game really fixed, or had they just not played anybody willing who was able to challenge it until Iowa? So now it is something to keep an eye on, especially heading into Penn State. I understand Penn State's front four is not the strength of their defense, but they're decently talented enough that they can at least challenge this Ohio State offense. That we can find out if the answer to that question was yes, the run game was really fixed, they just had an off week, or it's no, this is still an issue that we need to continue to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between a potentially bad game or whatever and then a reoccurring problem. And I don't think it's fair to call it that yet, especially when you've got a player like, for instance, Donovan Jackson. I think didn't have an especially strong game, the left guard. But he's a second-year guy. This is the best defense he's probably ever faced, and he'll need to learn from this moment and go forward. Doug, Ohio State also a lot of talk today about making adjustments during the game that seemed to really work in the pass game. They couldn't ever really get that going though in the run game, and those two things are so. We talked about this again on the post-game pod. How linked are those? How crucial is the run game to Ohio State having the pass game that it wants? It does seem to be important enough that they are going to have to find a way to also crack this code the next time and not just hope the passing game fixes it.
Kevin Wilson said that. Kevin Wilson said, we throw it well, but when we also run it well, that's when we really do everything. And, I still don't kind of believe it. They didn't run it well at all. They scored 54, and their passing game exploded all over Iowa in the final 20 minutes. So what's, the proof of you have to run it well? I don't know. I mean, because last year even it's a different CJ. It's an evolution of this. I just and I don't think they weren't getting smoked by Iowa. They're talking about staying on blocks, right? I think that to me is almost hey, maybe we haven't hey, against other teams this initial block was enough. Right. But now Iowa's good with their hands. Again, they're well coached. They fill gaps. Oh, I've got to stay on it to really clear this hole. So I do think there's things to learn from that. And listen, Kevin Wilson has been on this all year of from the preseason, the passing stats we don't care about. We're trying to win. So they really are trying to take that to heart. And the way they played early in the year, we saw that, right? They don't just want to chuck it around and go 10-2. I'm not sure what you're supposed to do with. They couldn't run it at all, and they scored 54, the most that Kirk Ferentz had ever given up. So the idea that we have to run to be successful, I almost would say, well, that's a nice sentiment, but I would point to Saturday as the anti of that, because you didn't run and you still were successful. And the one phrase, we were all very interested in the working it out during a game. Kevin Wilson said sometimes you got to make a couple ugly pars. Right, was making a golf analogy. And that I think was very clarifying for me. It's listen, I don't have it. I'm a little off. Make some ugly pars and then, make 4 birdies on the back 9 and you're good to go. And that's what the offense did.
I think that is a good analogy. I do think, though, that they are trying to ward off any sense of complacency, obviously, and you're always trying to get better. And things that they do in terms of the play action and stuff like that, that's dependent on people respecting the run game. But I also think Ryan Day made a good point that, just because you ran for 300 yards one week doesn't mean you're going to do it every week. And just because you got stymied one week doesn't mean now you have no run game and now they have to come out and throw the ball 50, 60 times a game. Although he might maybe want to use that excuse, I don't know, because he likes to throw the ball, obviously. But I think it's sort of like we talked about this. They have 6 games. There's a bye week, and now you get to kind of reestablish some momentum going in the second half, and this kind of helped reset the baseline of how they're going to have to be better against the run. I don't know if Penn State's the kind of team that can challenge them up front. enough to slow them down, but other teams will down the line, and they'll have to be ready for that challenge. More discussion about this on Buckeye Talk. Find it wherever you can find podcasts and get the text, 614-350-3315, news analysis, everything else all week long from Buckeye Talk.